Preparing for a global transfer agency and shareholder services a Computershare Equiniti interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 15 key questions you're likely to face. For each question, you'll see a sample answer followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. What does a transfer agent do, and why is the role important to issuers and shareholders? A transfer agent maintains the official record of who owns a company's shares. I would describe it as the operational bridge between the issuer and its shareholders. The role includes updating ownership records, processing transfers, supporting dividend payments, handling corporate actions, and answering shareholder queries. Accuracy matters because the register drives voting rights, distributions, tax reporting, and regulatory obligations. A mistake can affect investor trust, issuer reporting, and market confidence. While answering, focus on the shareholder register, ownership changes, dividend processing, corporate actions, investor servicing, regulatory compliance, and why accuracy protects both the issuer and the shareholder experience. Question 2. How would you explain the difference between registered shareholders and beneficial shareholders? Registered shareholders appear directly on the company's shareholder register, so the transfer agent can identify and service them directly. Beneficial shareholders own the economic interest, but their shares are usually held through a broker, nominee, custodian, or central securities depository. In practice, this means communications, proxy voting, and dividend flows may pass through intermediaries. I would emphasize that understanding the distinction is critical for accurate entitlement processing and shareholder engagement. Make sure to cover legal ownership versus economic ownership, direct registration, nominee or broker-held shares, CSD structures, communication challenges, and how this affects voting, dividends, and shareholder identification. Question 3. Walk me through how you would process a share transfer from one holder to another. I would start by checking the transfer request is complete, authorized, and supported by the right documentation. Then I would verify the current holding, confirm there are no restrictions or stop flags, validate signatures or identity evidence, and check tax or stamp duty requirements where applicable. Once cleared, I would update the register, retain a proper audit trail, and issue confirmations. If anything is inconsistent, I would pause processing and escalate. In your answer, talk about document intake, signature or identity checks, validation of shareholding, restrictions, updating the register, audit trail, confirmations, and escalation when details do not match. Question 4. What controls would you expect around dividend processing in a shareholder services environment? Dividend processing needs strong controls because small errors can affect thousands of shareholders. I would expect locked record date positions, independent calculation checks, tax withholding validation, bank account verification, and maker-checker approvals before payment release. After payment, I would reconcile cash sent, failed payments, returned items, and unclaimed balances. I would also monitor exception reports and communicate clearly with the issuer because dividend accuracy directly affects investor confidence. Be sure to mention record date positions, payment calculations, bank file controls, tax withholding, exception reports, reconciliations, maker-checker approval, unclaimed dividends, and communication with issuers and shareholders. Question 5. How do corporate actions such as stock splits, rights issues, or mergers affect the shareholder register? Corporate actions change shareholder entitlements, so the register must reflect the event accurately. For a stock split, I would recalculate holdings based on the approved ratio and reconcile total issued shares. For a rights issue, I would manage entitlements, elections, deadlines, and payments. For a merger, I would update ownership based on consideration terms. The key is controlling record dates, communications, exception handling, and post-event reconciliation. While answering, focus on entitlement calculation, record dates, ex-dates, fractional shares, elections, system updates, shareholder communications, reconciliations, and how errors can create financial and reputational risk. Question 6. A shareholder says they did not receive a dividend payment. How would you investigate? First, I would verify the shareholder's identity before discussing account details. Then I would confirm whether they held eligible shares on the record date and check the dividend payment method on file. I would review whether the payment was issued, rejected by the bank, withheld for tax reasons, sent by check, or marked as unclaimed. I would explain findings clearly, update missing information if permitted, and arrange reissue where controls allow. Make sure to cover calm client handling, identity verification, checking eligibility on record date, payment method, bank rejection files, address status, withholding, audit trail, and clear next step communication. Question 7. What does good data quality mean in transfer agency, and how would you improve it? Good data quality means the register is accurate, complete, current, and usable for servicing and regulatory reporting. I would look at issues such as invalid addresses, duplicate holders, missing tax details, outdated bank instructions, or inconsistent names. Improvement starts with validation at intake, followed by exception reporting, periodic cleanup, and targeted outreach. I would also track root causes, because preventing bad data is more valuable than repeatedly fixing it. In your answer, talk about complete and accurate names, addresses, tax IDs, bank details, duplicate records, deceased holders, returned mail, validation rules, remediation projects, and prevention at source. Question 8. How would you handle a high-volume deadline period, such as an AGM, dividend event, or corporate action election? During a peak event, I would first understand the deadline, volumes, and highest-risk work streams. Then I would prioritize time-critical items, monitor queues, and separate clean cases from exceptions. I would keep quality controls in place rather than sacrificing accuracy for speed, using sampling or second review where risk is higher. Clear status updates to managers, clients, and internal teams are essential. The best approach is controlled urgency, not rushed processing. Be sure to mention prioritization, SLA management, capacity planning, queues, exception triage, communication, quality controls, escalation routes, and balancing speed with accuracy under pressure. Question 9. What are the key compliance risks in shareholder services and transfer agency? The main compliance risks are identity, money movement data, and regulatory reporting. I would highlight AML and sanctions checks, fraud prevention on transfers or bank changes, protection of personal data, tax reporting accuracy, and proper record retention. Shareholder services teams also handle sensitive corporate action and ownership information, so confidentiality matters. My approach would be to follow procedures, document decisions, escalate red flags, and never override controls for convenience. While answering, focus on KYC, AML, sanctions screening, fraud prevention, data privacy, market abuse sensitivity, tax reporting, record retention, complaint handling, and jurisdiction-specific regulatory obligations. Question 10. How would you reconcile the shareholder register to issued share capital or market-facing records? I would begin by comparing total shares on the register to the company's issued share capital, adjusting for treasury shares, cancellations, or new issuances. Then I would review large nominee or CSD positions and investigate any suspense or pending transfer accounts. Breaks should be aged, assigned, and supported by evidence. Reconciliation is not just a tick-box exercise. It proves the register is reliable for dividends, voting, and reporting. Make sure to cover total shares outstanding, treasury shares, suspense accounts, CSD or nominee positions, pending movements, control accounts, breaks investigation, aging, and sign-off evidence. Question 11. What would you do if you found a processing error after a shareholder register update had already been completed? I would not try to quietly fix it without a record. First, I would stop any downstream impact and notify my supervisor or control owner. Then I would document what happened, identify affected shareholders, assess whether payments, voting rights, confirmations, or reporting were impacted, and follow the approved correction process. After resolution, I would help identify the root cause. The goal is accurate remediation and stronger controls, not blame avoidance. In your answer, talk about stopping further impact, notifying the supervisor, documenting the error, assessing financial or shareholder impact, correcting through approved procedures, root cause analysis, and control improvement. Question 12. How do you balance shareholder service quality with strict operational controls? Good service does not mean bypassing controls. It means helping the shareholder through them clearly. I would listen carefully, explain what we can and cannot do, verify identity, and set realistic timelines. If a request is urgent, I would escalate within the proper workflow rather than shortcut approvals. Shareholders may be frustrated by documentation requirements, but those controls protect their assets and the issuer's register. Strong service and risk management should support each other. Be sure to mention empathy, clear explanations, identity verification, controlled processing, SLA transparency, complaint prevention, escalation, and the idea that good service includes protecting the shareholder from fraud or errors. Question 13. What do you know about Computershare and Equiniti, and why is this role a good fit for you? Computershare and Equiniti are major providers of issuer, registry, transfer agency, employee share plan, and shareholder services. What interests me is the combination of client service, regulated operations, and high-volume accuracy. This role suits me because I enjoy detail-oriented work where controls matter, and where the output affects real investors and public companies. I also like that the business sits at the intersection of capital markets, corporate governance, data, and operations. While answering, connect the firms to issuer services, transfer agency, employee share plans, governance, shareholder engagement, scale, technology, regulated operations, and your interest in accuracy, client service, and controls. Question 14. Describe a time you had to deal with a difficult client, investor, or stakeholder. I would structure this using STAR. In a prior operations situation, a client was frustrated because an instruction had not been completed by the expected time. I listened first, confirmed the facts, identified the missing approval, and explained the next steps without being defensive. I escalated the approval queue, gave a realistic update time, and followed through. The issue was resolved, and the client appreciated the transparency more than an empty promise. Make sure to use a structured STAR answer showing listening, fact-finding, ownership, expectation management, escalation when needed, timely follow-up, and a result that protected both the relationship and the process. Question 15. If you joined a global shareholder services team, what metrics would you monitor to judge operational performance? I would monitor both service and control metrics. Key measures include SLA completion, first-time right processing, error rates, aged exceptions, reconciliation breaks, call handling times, complaint trends, and backlog volumes. For higher-risk processes, I would also track fraud alerts, payment rejects, and control breaches. Metrics should not be viewed in isolation. For example, faster processing is not positive if errors rise. The best dashboard shows speed, quality, risk, and client experience together. In your answer, talk about SLA achievement, processing accuracy, reconciliation breaks, aged exceptions, call response times, complaint volumes, first-time right rates, risk events, backlog trends, and client-specific service measures. If you are still with us, congratulations. You are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.